Nobody wanna give, everybody wanna take. Fine girls want to get it 1K. Talking loud, want to follow one day. Onion booty wants to pay 1K. Oh yeah, totori me one time, totori me.
I really love Sissi, so I'm going to talk about Empress Sissi while I'm doing this. So I'm just going to put a description of everything that I'm going to be using down there. And the look that I'm just doing is a wet hair look. The hair that I have is 24 inches. So once again, Empress Sissi, because Empress Sissi was known for having long hair. I still have the lace on, so I'm just going to start working with cutting out the lace. Like, I relate so much with Empress Sissi because she struggled a lot with mental health, especially with anxiety and with social isolation. That was like one of the biggest things that she had, was social isolation, and because of that, people just thought she was lonely. She also really struggled with anorexia. She was skinny her entire life. This woman was so skinny that in her 50s she weighed like 110 pounds. I think she weighed like 110 pounds like her whole life, like as an adult, until the day she died. She is also known as the queen of a small waist. Like, she is the queen of a cinched waist. Like, when you think about somebody who has waist trained so much that there's like waist, you need to think about Empress Sissi. There's that girl the other day, what's her name? She's like a Ghana actress, and she was the one, let me look it up. A girl cheating with Banner Boy. Anyways, that girl has a small waist. That girl has like a tiny, like non-existent waist. Empress Sissi was like worse than that. Empress Sissi, I think her waist was like all through her life, her waist was 19 inches. Yeah. She had 3 daughters and 1 son, 4 kids. And even in her 50s, I think she died at 60. Yeah. She was actually born into a royal family, but her parents were like pretty liberal and really cool. Her dad was like really cool, very liberal. So Sissi wasn't really like super prepared for being an empress or being a queen or the court life because of how she was raised. Aunt Sophia was, the best way to put it in today's term would be, she was like sassy Lanster. Like, that's how strict she was with her kids and wanting her kids to be rulers. So even though Sophie's son was not meant to be the next king, she was very manipulative. She managed to get her uncle or someone like that of a throne. So I'm just gonna color this just a little bit with my skin tone. She wanted the son to get married, but she just felt like he was an outsider, it'd be too much to handle. She wanted someone that would be easier to control, someone who already understood how these things were gonna work and would be on her side, make things easier for her. So she told the sister, she said, well, you have an older daughter called Helen. Why don't you bring Helen over and I'm gonna bring my son over. It was a very long trip, but she went with Sissi, the younger daughter, and also went with Helen. Helen was the one that was supposed to get married to Frank Joseph. So instead of Joseph proposing to the actual girl that he was supposed to get married, Helen, he ended up falling in love with Sissi and proposing to Sissi, who at the time was 15, about to turn 16, who was just there to be a spectator, dragged to this event, and suddenly now she's gonna be the wife. And she wasn't even prepared for this. The thing is that Sissi was not just not prepared for this, Sissi didn't even want this. Suddenly, now she's going to be empress and not her sister. That was like the beginning of like Sissi's turmoil. They tried to make this image of her of being this beautiful, perfect fairy tale girl, and some historians say that really affected her and, you know, just pushed her into anorexia because of having to live up to people's expectations. So anyways, the hair color, I changed the hair color. I kind of colored it a little bit. And remember, she's not from Vienna, so when she went there, she was really homesick. She was very young. Suddenly she doesn't have her mom, her friends, her dad, anybody around her. She's in a new place with a mother-in-law who really doesn't like her. Living in court meant adhering to really strict rules, and a mother-in-law was very controlling, which just made her life even more miserable. She just hated being there. But I think like within a year of her, so I put two wig cups to try and lay it down a little bit. So I'm using alcohol to take off any excess makeup so I can put the glue. Within a year, she got pregnant with her first child, who happened to be a daughter. The mother-in-law, Sophia, said that she would call her a silly young mother, and she said that she was too irresponsible and too young to take care of these kids. She pretty much just kidnapped, like stole the kids, and would not let Sissi see the kids. And it was so frustrating for Sissi. And she wasn't even allowed to breastfeed the children, and this super depressed Sissi even more. And then one time she goes back to her room and she finds a pamphlet. She finds a pamphlet next to her bed that says that it read something like a queen or an empress that does not bear a son who will be heir is a useless queen, is an unwanted queen, is an outsider and unwanted in this area, blah blah blah. And it just went on and on. And she didn't know who put the pamphlet there, and it was like there were rumors all over the court, like who would have put this like pamphlet there, because obviously it was so depressing to her. But obviously people knew it was the mother-in-law. Well, Hungary and Vienna, when she moved in, Hungary and Vienna were two different countries. She fell in love with Hungary while she was there. She was not Hungarian, but she kind of fell in love with the Hungary culture. And so she wanted to go visit Hungary. So she begged her husband to take her on this trip to Hungary and to take the kids as well, the two daughters. Also, this is another moment in Sissi's life where things just did not work out for her and just made her life even more miserable. I swear, this girl just had a hard life. She really had a hard life. So anyways, they agreed to go to Hungary with the kids, and the mother-in-law allows her to go with the kids. And you will never guess what happened. As soon as they get there, the kids get sick. They start having diarrhea and they have a fever, and it just goes on. I think it went on for like 2 days. And fortunately, the youngest child, who was only a few months old, survived the stomach bug. But unfortunately, Sophie, her eldest daughter, who was at that time 2 years old, died. Yep. And you can imagine just how painful that was for Sissi, and you can also imagine how the mother-in-law was just going to use this situation to her advantage even more, because that's exactly what she did. She said, see, I let this little girl take her kids this one time, and guess what? The kids are dead. Yeah, her mental health like really went down. She was super depressed around this time. And the other thing around this time also was her anorexia also became super bad, where she was like barely eating. She was mostly eating like milk products and eggs, and if she gained anything like above like 100, it was 50 kgs, like around 110 pounds, she would go on this like starving episodes to lose the weight. Like she was super obsessed at this point with her weight, and some historians have said that probably the reason why is because she just felt like she had weight. Okay, so some historians have said that she probably just felt like she had no control over her life, and at least she had some control over her body. So around this time, so Empress Sissi has this super long hair, and this is the, I guess, good part about her this fairy tale life, is that Empress Sissi had this super long hair, and she had this one lady who would do her hair, and it is actually said that if that this lady would do her hair, her really long hair, every 2 weeks, Sissi's hair would be washed with a combination of eggs and cognac. Yes, cognac, Hennessy. She used Hennessy to wash her hair. And when she did, because her hair was so long, Like the only way for we to dry, because they didn't have blow dryers, was she would literally pace up and down in her bedroom the whole day until her hair dried, which was easy for Sissi to do because Sissi loved to exercise. She had this little ladder in her room that she would like climb up and down for hours. She would go exercising. She would go walking for miles and miles and miles. She also really loved she loved horse riding. Actually, it is said that during her time she was like probably one of the most well-known female horse rider. She was an introvert, but I don't know if it was the social anxiety that made her really pull away from people. But then again, she was in a place where people didn't even like her, or it was just being an introvert. But I would say, putting myself in her shoes, I just feel like the social anxiety, just having to deal with people who don't even like you and are judging you constantly and are not like you, is probably what made her really withdraw. She just did not like socializing with people. She preferred staying alone. She didn't like attending all these ballrooms, all these court activities. She really wasn't interested in any of that stuff. Matter of fact, Sissi was really bad, and she was known to be really bad with this one thing where even when royalties would pop up to say hello, you know, like a queen would like show up to say hello, Sissi would refuse to entertain them. She'd just be like, no. But I completely like utterly understand her, because seriously, who shows up without calling, you know? I mean, for someone like me who's, I don't know, I'm not really like an introvert, but I do struggle with my own social anxiety and social isolation. I don't like people just showing up. Like, I have to be mentally prepared to entertain people. Otherwise, if someone just shows up, or like if I'm somewhere and it's more people than I expected, then I don't want to be there. So I completely understand why she just chose not to entertain people, even royalties. She actually got pregnant again. And fortunately for her, this time, it was a boy. And the boy was named Rudolph. His name was Rudolph. Is there a deer called Rudolph? I know Hitler, but isn't there a deer called Rudolph? Now that she has a son, she gets a lot of political power in the court. Suddenly, she can pull strings and say things and do what she wants, and ain't nobody gonna do anything about it. And she took full advantage of it. And I can't even blame her. I mean, sister went wild. She even started smoking cigarettes, which was unheard of for women at the time. So at this point, I'm just going to define the curls, and I'm gonna do it with conditioner, because it says synthetic and I have synthetic hair. Usually what I use on both synthetic or natural hair is I just mix regular conditioner with water in a spray bottle, and that's just what I use to define the curls. For the wet look, I'm going to use Sprits, and for the curls, really, this is what I'm gonna do. This will hold them. The Sprits and the gel will kind of define them more and also create that wet look. It is said that the husband, the Emperor, Frank Joseph, loved Sissi in some way, and that in his office or whenever he went anywhere, he always carried all this portraits and images of Sissi, and he kept them everywhere in his office. And it's kind of said, it's as if he loved Sissi, but Sissi never really reciprocated the love. So at this point, actually what Sissi did, Sissi felt bad for him, and he was kind of rumored to be having an affair with a lady called Catherine. She was an actress, and Sissi actually encouraged the affair because she kind of felt bad about the husband being lonely. And at this point, she already had this child. She had already gotten all this political influence, and she had gotten the people of Hungary what she felt like they deserved. And she just decided to just travel the world with her child, live her best life, single, even though she's married. And also she did a lot of charity at the time. She went to so many charity events. You know, she freed so many political prisoners. She built asylums for people with mental health. And she was just known as just being such a good person. And so it looked as if life was going pretty well for Sissi. And then the worst happened a few years later. So you just spray the conditioner to define the curls, and then after that you'll just put the gel and the spritz on to give it the wet look and to hold it. Rudolph decides to commit suicide, kills the mistress, and then commits suicide, one bullet to the head. what do they call it? It was considered murder-suicide case for the longest time. But in 1960, a forensic expert decided to exhume the bodies and found out that it actually wasn't a murder-suicide. It was actually, she actually died. She died from bleeding, an attempted abortion, and that after she died, he shot himself. So his death completely ruined the succession lineage, because he didn't even have a son to like pass on the lineage to. Sissi decided that she was going to wear black for mourning for the rest of her life, and she pretty much wore black until the day that she died after that. And her depression got so bad. It is said that she just constantly talked about killing herself. That's all she constantly talked about. After the age of 30, Sissi also refused to take any more pictures or portraits. She wanted to just be portrayed as young, beautiful Sissi. Imagine, at just the age of 30. She was really obsessed with her looks. Okay, so you kind of spray the spritz over here if you want it to lay down flat. Yes. So she just maintained this perfect body, perfect looks all through her life, her corsetting. And I said she had this one lady who would do her hair. Her hair would take hours and hours to do. It would take like 2 to 3 hours every day to just comb her hair. That because her hair was so long, it would get so heavy. She would constantly get headaches because of how long her hair was. And the lady that did her hair, because Sissi just loved her and didn't want anybody else to do her hair, she actually got promoted. Actually, she forced her way to promotion. She told Sissi, I'm not gonna come to work until you give me a promotion and name me Imperial hairdresser. So Sissi had to call her Imperial hairdresser and increase her salary. So those are really the things that she's really known for, is her good looks. But as you can see, she had a really hard lifetime. She just had a really hard life. So we kind of sum it up. Okay, how does the hair look? This is the wet look. So we kind of wipe down now to her death. So when she traveled with a different name. But someone at the hotel that she was staying in decided to snitch. Someone decided to snitch on her while she was in Geneva. And they found out that the Empress of Austria and the Queen of Hungary was in Geneva, Switzerland. So actually, like, paparazzi started taking pictures of her and this and that. And she had been warned that there were so many assassinations going on at the time and that she should not travel. But, you know, at this point, I don't even think she cared. So anyways, on this day that she died, she says, I don't want an entourage. I don't want people following me. She never liked people following her around and causing the scene of, oh my God, royalty. She didn't like that. So she tells all these people to go ahead of her, and that she's kind of just going to go with just one lady and they're just going to briskly walk to the steamboat. So they all leave her and they go to the boat, and then she walks in later on. Well, while she's walking there, the anarchist Luigi recognizes her. So he actually used like an industrial needle that was like really long. It was like 4-inch long. So he got really close to her and he stabbed her. He stabbed her on her left chest. And like I said, my little Empress Sissi was the queen of waist training and the queen of what? Waist. So she was wearing her really tight corset, and you can imagine how tight it was at 19 inches. It was super tight. So she gets stabbed and she almost didn't even realize it, but it says that actually like she fell unconscious immediately after she was stabbed. And the lady that was with her helped her up, and she actually got up and she walked all the way to the boat. And they were like, okay, something happened. I think somebody attacked her. But there was like barely any blood because I say it was like an industrial needle. It was very thin. So they get to the boat. And at this point, you know, she's like in and out of consciousness, but she's still talking. And they asked her, which is always important to me about how the last moments of someone's life. So they asked her, they say, you know, are you in any pain? And she said, no, I'm not. 'Cause when they did her postmortem, they found out that it had actually punctured. It went through her fourth rib, her lung, and to her heart, and it actually pierced her heart in the left ventricle. So you can imagine how much bleeding it did on its way out. And actually what she was experiencing was cardiac tamponade. She was bleeding inside the pericardial sac. But they say that because she was wearing such a tight corset, that is actually the reason why she stayed alive to even like walk all the way back to the boat and like talk those last minutes. Otherwise she would have died within like 3-4 heartbeats. But because she was wearing such a tight corset, it just kind of held everything in, applied pressure. And because she was away from home, they sent a telegram to her husband, Frank Joseph, and it's actually say that the first telegram that they sent, just saying that she's dead, he actually thought that she had committed suicide, which just shows how they knew how bad her mental state was, and they were just expecting any moment she was just going to. That she had written in her will that if she was ever to die, she wanted all her jewelry, or like most of it, sold to charity, or sold and all the money given to charity. So she was still able to do good even after her death. But yeah, so that's the story of Sissi, and that's how you get a wet hair look. You can get it wetter by just adding more gel and then spritzing it, and you can also mix the spritz and the gel together at the same time. She did actually end up being the longest reigning empress at the time, and she reigned for 44 years.